Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is misplaced loyalties. Sometimes we find ourselves feeling loyal to people engaged in struggle and suffering and lack. And in that loyalty, we end up kind of committing ourselves to those conditions for ourselves and for them. And so we get to explore this weird dynamic and find our way, hopefully find our way free of it. So before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating this brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub those hands together and feel all that sensation, the pressure, the temperature, the friction. And when you stop rubbing them together, feel all that tickling and tingling, all that sensation. Allow all of those feelings to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Good morning, welcome, Rosalind. So good to have you here with us this morning, and welcome to everybody else who's joining us. Today we're talking about misplaced loyalties, and it's so interesting. I've seen this happen or seen this dynamic show up with multiple folks that I've worked with, where we have loyalties to a family member, or we have loyalties to a particular group. And, maybe the group is defined by struggle. It's like we're in the struggle together, we're in the fight together. We're maybe there's loyalty to a parent, and the way that might show up is, I can't surpass your accomplishments because out of loyalty, because that would be somehow a betrayal. Like if I made more money than you, or if I were more successful than you, or we might have these kinds of loyalties to friends. We might have certain loyalties to groups that are committed to patterns that are kind of perpetuating exactly what we're trying to grow beyond. And I think it's such an interesting phenomena, like I would be a traitor to the cause if I were happy, so for instance, even environmental activism, for example, there are people that'll say, if you're not miserable, then you're not awake. This is not necessarily the case, and it is not it's a misplacement of loyalty to align oneself with the limits of those we love or care for or are committed to. So if I'm loyal to you, it doesn't mean that I have to think the same way. If I am loyal to you, it doesn't mean I have to share your suffering and your misery. And it was really interesting because I was talking to someone who is very active in social justice. And so part of that is we're in the struggle together, part of it is we're in the fight together. And while there is power in numbers, there may be better ways to define that kinship and that bond. And maybe it is to transform what was the struggle or the fight into finding freedom. It's kind of like when we talk about folks who have been through the ravages of cancer, for example, and defining themselves as survivors. I get that there's some empowerment in that, and I get that there's an affinity with others through that as well. And there is that bond that's holding one to being defined by the cancer, and I get being defined by the triumph over the cancer, and the cancer still at the core of that. So, to be vital and alive, it's a different frequency, it's a different tone, I think, than being a survivor. Because to be a survivor, inherent in being a survivor is fighting. I think maybe it's triumph, and that's a personal thing, like how it's integrated in oneself. If we're defining ourselves by the struggle, it's different from defining ourselves as triumphant, as unlimited, as being able to accomplish anything, so maybe, there may be the experience of that for some folks who identify as survivors, that they are empowered to be able to create miracles, so maybe that's the case. I'm talking about, let's look at these loyalties to that twist our capacity, our capability for being. If I'm loyal in the struggle, what happens if I want to be elevating my life beyond struggle and suffering? How do I do that and maintain my relationship, my loyalties? I think it's an important question. And this is something very much with social circles and with familial circles, not outdoing our parents, or not succeeding beyond where our parents are. So if they're unhappy and struggling and suffering, then we have an obligation out of our loyalty to struggle and suffer along with them. And I think we get to question that in a very deep way. To first recognize it, it's like, oh my gosh, here it's not necessarily like the parent most likely wants you to succeed, but somehow it might feel like it's an abandonment to move into a space of being happy or financially successful or romantically successful. Maybe your parents had really fraught relationships with one another. So Rosalind says obligation to help carry the burden. I get that. Yeah. So the thing is that we take on these burdens most often without even realizing that we're doing that. And so let's say we have someone in our immediate circle, family member, friend, whatever, who has constant drama and or has really low self-esteem and keeps creating these circumstances for themselves, there's on some level, and consciously it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but on some level we may feel obligated to be experiencing similar suffering so that they don't feel abandoned. You know, if we it's like the old adage, misery loves company. And so we sacrifice ourselves to that company. It's kind of crazy, you know? If we look at some of our ideas, you know, that maybe it's a familial idea that the world is a dangerous place and the only thing people care about you for is what's in your pocket. You know, if we have loyalty to our family, we might feel an obligation to believe those beliefs, you know, to be enrolled in that way of thinking. And somehow our own transformation and our own growth and our own evolution somehow ends up being translated into an abandonment of that family, or a violation or a betrayal of the family, because maybe we think differently. Even with political views, you know, even with this whole thing with COVID and all the fracturing that happened in families and communities as a result of different perspectives on that, you know, like somehow our beliefs are different. So now, you know, we've broken the bond, we've broken the loyalty, we've been disloyal somehow. It's really interesting. It's really interesting how, in order to grow, oftentimes we need to recreate our social support system. You know, this was so for me when I chose to commit myself to the vision of the eco park. I knew that it was essential for me to establish a new support system, because I knew that the support system I had didn't have space for that kind of vision, didn't have space for that kind of possibility, and would crush me if that was my only support system. Like, I know you must have people in your lives who are dream crushers. And what is behind that is trying to keep people at the same level, you know, so let's keep things easy. Let's keep things copacetic. Let's keep things predictable and the same. So don't grow, don't change, because that threatens me, that threatens my beliefs, my existence, and it also threatens me with abandonment. So out of loyalty, sometimes we limit ourselves in profound ways. Profound ways. And these loyalties are misplaced, because if we truly have a commitment to another person and to ourselves, and we are recognizing an opportunity for transformation and growth, maybe what we get to do is to share that with the other person, people. Maybe we get to instead of enrolling or being enrolled in the limitations, maybe we get to expand the boundaries for all of us. So with this person who was engaged in social justice and social struggle in that way, where the struggle, you know, we're in it together in the fight, we're in it together in the struggle. Maybe there's an opportunity to move beyond the struggle collectively that could be explored, and that's the higher expression of that loyalty and commitment, rather than saying, okay, I'm loyal to you, so I'm going to limit myself to stay within your limits. Rather than that, we get to elevate ourselves and invite others to rise with us. Rosalind says it becomes a desire for freedom from expectation. If you were living the way you were supposed to, then you wouldn't be in adversity. Well, that's an interesting juxtaposition there. This idea that if we were living the way we were supposed to, we wouldn't be in adversity. What if the way we're supposed to is the source of the adversity? You know, I mean, I think that that's the case in so many situations, you know, where we get raised in a family. I was told as a kid, kids are meant to be seen and not heard. And to be seen and not heard was living in adversity. It was living in a suppressed environment, right? So we have this fairy tale idea of supposed to be, like how life is supposed to be, how we're supposed to be. And by the way, guys, if you guys are writing comments and I'm not responding, it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's because I don't see the comments. So if you want to join the conversation, and you're invited to do so, please go to the Enlightened World Network Facebook page or YouTube channel. You can put your comments in there and I will respond to them when I see them. So oftentimes the supposed to is the source of oppression, like most times. When we oppression and suppression, when we live in this notion of the way things are supposed to be. And I love that you talked in the same sentence about expectation, freedom from expectation, because this supposed to be how things should be is a source of oppression, in that we measure our lives against these fabricated metrics. We measure our lives against these manufactured ideals that often aren't ideal in the first place. You know, like children are meant to be seen and not heard, kind of thing. You know, if you grow up in an environment as a child who's meant to be seen and not heard, when do you learn how to be seen and heard? I mean, really, when do you learn? When is it okay to be seen and heard? You're taught not to be seen and heard, then you go to school, you're called on in the classroom. Where is that transition? Where do we learn to be seen and heard? This is such an issue for so many people. Fear of being seen, fear of speaking up, fear of being visible, because so many of us paid so dearly for that. You know, if we're in a family with racist ideals and ideas, Are we betraying our loyalty to step into a pursuit of equity? What are we being loyal to? Are we loyal to ideas? Are we loyal to the superficial manifestation of our internal culture? Or are we loyal to the potential for those people? Are we loyal to the possibility? So what I'm encouraging this morning is to take a look at how through this false sense of loyalty or misguided sense of loyalty, like loyalty on the wrong plane, maybe on a plane that's limited. What happens if we elevate ourselves and elevate our not expectations? What if we elevate ourselves and our awareness of possibility? Possibility and the awareness of it is very different from expectation. But if we open the doors, so if we open the doors to our potential and the potential of others that we love and are committed to, then what's possible? If we look to the potential, what's possible? Without an expectation, without a demand. Good morning, Jenny. Welcome. So good to have you here with us this morning. We're talking about misplaced loyalties. So Rosalind says, it's loving to protect your child. How much protection do they need? Neglected children versus overprotected. Love has to be somewhere in the middle. So any action that we take with a child or another human comes from wherever we are coming from in that moment. And if we're protecting our child out of fear, if we're protecting our child from the experiences of life to because we are so afraid, what we're doing is we're teaching our child to be afraid. You know, what does that protection look like? So I get what you're saying, neglected versus overprotected. This is, you know, there's a balance, and really that balance comes from our wholeness. So as we seek our greater wholeness, we are better able to teach and convey our better wholeness. Jenny says, come from what we learned as children. We do come from what we learned as children. And there's this loyalty, you know, it's like family values. These are our family values. You know, I was raised with some pretty toxic ideas around money, you know, like money being the most important measure of everything and anything. That's a pretty tough place to come from. I mean, it's not, Jenny says, monkey see, monkey do. It's true that we're taught how to treat ourselves. We're taught how to treat others. We're taught beliefs. And the thing is that then most often we operate from, this is how the world is. This is what I should believe. This is how I should act. We're taught those things. Some of those things are great. Some of those things, not so much. You know, so we get these lessons as children, and then we spend the rest of our lives growing through that, healing it, hopefully, transforming it, hopefully becoming better able to sort through what works and what's life affirming, and releasing those things that are not. So look at your loyalties, look at who and what you're loyal to. Look at how those loyalties are serving you and serving the people you're loyal to. So if you're miserable and I'm miserable and I'm wanting to not be miserable, but I'm choosing to be miserable because I want to be because out of my loyalty to you, I don't want you to feel abandoned. Am I serving you by helping to perpetuate your misery? Am I serving me? Same thing with poverty. It's like, am I serving you by staying in lack? Am I serving you by not succeeding? Jenny says, I was sobbing this morning and how I was treated as a child and how it made me feel and how it made me who I am. Jenny, those moments of revelation are important points that give you an opportunity to pivot. So recognizing how you were treated and how it made you feel, you get to give yourself what you needed as a child. So I had a session with someone yesterday exactly on this topic. That their little girl inside was just angry and hurt and abandoned and sad. And the thing is that we learned how to treat ourselves that way. And so to come to her and be loving her wasn't initially the easiest thing. I saw this with another client who found that it wasn't so easy to love their little boy because they had been taught that he wasn't lovable. And so if we can cultivate that relationship with ourselves, if we, as the more resourced adults, can go and be with these wounded children that we are, they have so much to give us as well. And we can rewrite our history. We can heal that little girl or little boy inside. We can learn to love them. And they will in turn learn to love us. And then it's this upward spiral of healing. But that's where it starts, is learning new patterns. Understand that we were taught these things, not because we're not worthy, but because the people that taught us didn't know how to do better. They taught us that we weren't worthy of love, or we weren't worthy of attention, or we weren't worthy of respect. Jenny says questioning. Jenny says, I am, yes. I wrote down questioning myself how love and nutrition can how to love and nourish my inner child and hug her. Yes, and this is a relationship, Jenny, that develops over time. So we get to nurture that part of ourselves. I used to speak so nasty to myself because that's what I was taught. You know, with self-hatred, I talk to myself with disdain. Stupid, stupid, stupid. I would say things like that. Or you're such an idiot. Things like that I would say to myself. Now there's more of a nurturing. Now it's like, it's okay. It's okay, sweetheart. You're okay. We'll get through this. And Jenny says, yes, I reflected how I was a mom to my daughter. Now you get to be a mom to you too. Right? So, misplaced loyalties. Jenny says I was overprotective of her. Well, good for you to recognize that, Jenny. Good for you to recognize that. Now that, you know, now you can be reconciling. And I know you are, which is awesome. So that's it for this morning. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live here each weekday morning on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network and Enlightened World Living and EWN One with the Earth. And by the way, I don't know if I said I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. And Jenny, I don't know what, there are all these funny things that are coming through. Jenny says, I have a question, please. Okay. I actually have an extra couple minutes this morning. So you have a question? I want to know the movie. What movie? I'm not sure what movie you're asking about. I've got another minute. What the movie oh, okay. So Jenny says, I want to know what the movie is you're watching tonight. So Jenny, thank you for that. That's really kind. So every Thursday, we have a movie night for Sustainability Now. And tonight's movie is actually an interview with this brilliant young woman named Clover Hogan and her collaborator, who is a psychologist whose name I don't remember at the moment, who specializes in climate anxiety. And this is something that Clover, she's only 23 years old, I think. She's been an activist since she was 11. She is sort of specializing in eco-anxiety, where really addressing the deep emotions that we're all experiencing on some level around what's happening on the planet, and how we can address those emotions that are kind of this underlying, consistent, persistent current of anxiety and fear and sadness and all of this stuff, denial. So Jenny says, how can I watch it? Jenny, you're awesome. Thank you for asking. So you guys can go to sustainabilitynow.global. Instead of sustainabilitynow.com, you want to go to sustainabilitynow.global. sustainabilitynow.global, and sign up for our email list. There's a sign up at the top of the front page of the website. And let me see, I'll put the link in the chat. HTTPS. Thank you, Jenny, for this. I really appreciate it. So sustainability now.global. I'm pretty sure that I put it in right. So oh, I think it won't let me do that. Oh, maybe, I don't know if it went through. because I put it in and it's not showing in the chat. So I just put it in the chat through Restream. Let's see if I can do it again. I'll just try one more time. No, oh, it looks like it might have worked this time. Okay, so anyway, that is the website. And if you go, do you see it in the chat, Jenny? The spelling is SUSTAINABILITY, sustainability now, NOW.global, GLOBAL. So if you go there, sign up for the website, you will get an email tonight at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time with a link to sign in, and it's called Thank you, Rosalind. For whatever reason, it didn't seem to register when I put it in. Thank you so much. And so I think it's a really important conversation because I think it's impacting all of us on an other than conscious level most of the time, but it's ever present for all of us. So I think it's a really valuable conversation. Jenny, thank you for asking and for being persistent. And Rosalind, thank you for including the link. And I hope you guys show up tonight. It's from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. You'll get the email at 6:30. Today is Thursday. What is today's date? Today is October 13th. So we do this every Thursday, but we have different programming all the time. And that's what it is for tonight. Jenny, I don't know what time it is, Wyoming time. You'll have to get the conversion. We're on the East Coast. So whatever the conversion is from Wyoming to the East Coast, it's 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. So hope you can join us. And that's it for today. So hopefully I get to see you guys again here really soon, like maybe tomorrow. And until then, so much love.